soused and fledgling laborers will soon descend on his tiny town to guzzle a sour nectar, though no flowers in sight, nor prudish mother, other than the scarce locals pitched forward over open bottles, hanging on each other's every worried word. He sneers from under his leafy post that after 7 slow years sanctioning city boys, seducing coyly stubborn country girls, he knows this half-full dance hall en plein air will once again fill, then thrill to the bal musette, the stench of lithe, sensuous bodies peppering the evening breeze. Listen as he laments the loss of his own young life, when he assumed a future featuring far more than indulging working class brats till the day he died. Now, even the cracked glass crowning the cafe's lamppost seems to signify his doors have shut, not a one ajar. And this subsistence beside a scenic river will never proffer further options, none anyway that could set him free. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, David, for sharing.
You're welcome.
Next,
Now,
Alan,
how
would
do
you
I
like
get
to
my-
go next? There should be a stop sharing button somewhere, either up or down. I think it should be red, so it should be.
There it is.
Okay, right. Good.
Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so Alan, are you next?
I can go. I was going to share a video, but I don't know that it'll work. So we can try to.
You can try.
Yeah.
Do you want to sing it live? Would that be better, or do you prefer with the music?
Well, I don't have anything prepared for accompaniment there, just me. So
Okay.
probably not a good idea. There was a reason for wanting to do this way, but I'll just check and see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll go back to something else. But here's the screen.
Should. Maybe if you share your screen, if you go to YouTube and then share it, we'll be able to hear it. In the meantime, I'll introduce Dr. Alan Hickman. Dr. Alan Hickman is a poet and essayist who has been teaching English literature and composition at the American University in Dubai for the past 7 years. His interests are music, film, and travel. He received his PhD in English from the University of Arkansas in 1990.
Well, I think maybe the sound is going to work, but I don't see any. Do you see a picture?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a series of photographs that I took of a project that I was doing, and it seemed to illustrate what I wanted to say in this particular song. So the song is about 50 years old, but the photographs date from a more recent time. I'll see how this sounds.
Sound.
We don't hear anything.
You know?
No.
Maybe well, you hear me.
Yeah, we hear you. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I honestly don't know how that could be. So that's weird. Stop video participant. I don't see anything that would allow me to. I mean, it seems like you would at least hear my computer if you.
Oh, Robbie's saying you have to share the sound of the video with the computer. Okay, let me see how you can do that. So you see the microphone sign at the lower left? You see that, Alan? Yeah, that's where you mute and unmute. There's this little arrow next to it. If you click on the arrow, there might be something that we can do here.
Select a microphone.
Maybe same as system, select the speaker, or it's not the microphone, it's probably the speaker. So video settings, okay, or audio settings. Let's see, if we go to the, so if you click on audio settings, then,
This might do it.
oh, okay.
Do you hear it?
I don't.
No, I mean, a second ago. If not, I'll just read a poem. I mean, if it's not going to work, because it's
Let me see.
pointless without the.
Let's check the video settings. No, it doesn't say anything about sharing sound.
All right, nothing.
No. Okay.
All right. Well, I don't know how it works, but it says same as system on here. I'll try.
Yeah, try that. Oh, yes, it's working now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. I should know. Should have known. All right. Well, I don't know about the volume, but I'm going to go ahead and try it.
I can hear it.
I, for one, am hardly getting anything.
Yeah. We lost the sound
I
You
hardly
lost
got
the
it.
sound.
Yeah,
just now.
it was pretty spotty.
Oh, okay. Robbie
Well,
is sharing something with us, so maybe this would help us. Let's see.
That's good. I'll just leave it then. I thought I should have figured that out long before
Oh,
we
don't
had.
worry. Don't worry. We can still do it at the end if you want. I'll
Oh, well,
check.
it'll be fun. Well, you can find it on your own. Well, memories by somebody else, if you want.
Well,
I have to unshare now, and I'm not sure where that is, so I got to find that. Pause share, and then new share maybe.
Is there a stop share button that you see?
It says resume and new share.
Oh,
So I put it on new, and it's nothing coming up that
No.
allows. Oh,
Up at the top,
yeah, it should be in red.
stop share. I see it. Okay, there you go.
Okay. Right.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe I could read a short poem just quickly, I guess.
Okay, that's fine. I can look up the link that Robbie shared with us, so we can leave that to the end while I fix the settings and I see what needs to be done, and then we can work it out. So don't worry.
Maybe another, yeah, maybe or another time. That'll be fine.
It's okay.
I'll just read a real quick one, so it'll be sort of along the same lines. This is called Ruins. I don't think I've read this one before, but like the romantic poets, I too have a soft spot for ruins. I scorn to imagine a castle keep uncrumbled and restored to lustrous youth. I must much prefer a sweatered manse to a puffed up Notre Dame. That's why, my dear, I you so prize, like a rare jewel set in gold. That's just begun to rust. Your nose hair and your gray eyes, notwithstanding, I love you for what was. Walrus, but wouldn't trade what is for all the woolies in Angora.
Wow, like it. Yeah, excellent. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Alan. I'm sorry about the problem with the audio, but we'll get back to it later. Well, after I figure it out. And next, Chris, are you ready? Chris, is Chris here? I don't see her anymore. Okay, yeah, maybe she's not here. So Carly, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to go. Definitely. Thank you, Roula.
you,
It's been so nice to see familiar faces and this little journal family. So that's really cool to be able to get to hear people read, in some cases a second time, get another chance to enjoy your work. So brilliant. Right, so I'm going to be reading a couple of poems out of my new poetry pamphlet, which is called Anastasia, Look in the Mirror. And the first one that I'm going to, you're going to introduce me. Sorry to jump the gun.
Fine. That's okay, that's fine. So Dr. Carly Brown is joining us from Scotland today. She's a writer and academic, originally from Austin, Texas, and she's now living in Edinburgh. She's the author of a best-selling children's picture book called I Love St. Andrews and a debut poetry pamphlet. Her second poetry pamphlet, Anastasia, Look in the Mirror, which she will be sharing from today, was released in 2020. Known for her lively and witty spoken word poetry, Carly has performed at Glastonbury Festival, Stanza Poetry Festival, and the Edinburgh Fringe. She holds a doctorate of fine arts in creative writing from the University of Glasgow and is currently working on a historical novel. Carly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, sorry for jumping the gun there. I was just really excited to share my poems with you guys. Yeah, so as Roula said, I'll be sharing poems from this my latest pamphlet, Anastasia, Look in the Mirror. So the first one was one that was also published in the Indelible's latest issue, the Escapism issue, and it's another ekphrastic poem. So I'll share, maybe after I finish reading, I can share a link to the picture if anyone's curious to see the painting that the poem is inspired by. So this poem is inspired by a painting called Luxembourg Gardens by one of the Scottish Impressionist painters, the Scottish colorist painters, which was a group of post-impressionist painters that I really, really love, called Samuel Peploe. So yeah, it's inspired by Luxembourg Gardens by Samuel Peploe from 1910. And the poem is called French. French. French purrs like a white cat in the sun window and rasps like cigarette throats after boozy nightclubs, a language of audacity and elegance. We learned early how to conjugate, adding EZ and E depending on the subject, tacking endings onto verbs like hats. Ask me anything. Is the Louvre nearby? Oui, descendez cette rue et toi. I will drop words in your palm like chocolat. We can spend all day with our mouths around vowels, tossing R's off our tongues in bursts of sweet air. But when they took me to the Jardin des Tuileries, nobody asked me for my words. I held them in the folds of my English skirt, gazing up at flamboyant trees, the grass lit with flowers and everything swaying, no firm edges like the language I wanted to speak.
Lovely, lovely. Very,
thank you.
Very witty.
Thank you.
Funny poem, lovely poem.
Thank you so much. And thanks for publishing it, Roula. Thank you so much for
I love that poem.
Thank you. It's a little bit of travel for all of us stuck in our homes. We get to kind of imaginatively travel. These next two poems, so I'll read two more from the pamphlet, are kind of lost love poems, in a sense, poems about lost love, but they also are a little bit inspired by the landscape of Scotland. As Roula mentioned, I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, so hello from Scotland, and these have little bits of the Scottish landscape kind of dotted in them as well. So the first one that I'll share of these two is called Fisherman Knit. So Fisherman Knit. I give you a litany of reasons to stay. Your resilience, your fisherman knit jumper. You offered me the cuff once and pointed to the stitches, a pattern of receding waves. Wasn't I lucky to see the language of the grizzled early morning men etched in the light blue patterning of your well-made and long-lasting yarn? Tonight, like a medieval poet who never touched his beloved, I give a catalog of traits. How you add too much milk to porridge, how you tuck in your shirts, how you wake up early to go down to the sea when the tide comes in, as if somehow you caused it to happen. Sometimes I see your grandparents walk the beach, their bodies padded with wool, huddled under a black umbrella. I wish then that we could be like them. On that day, your jumper would be the right thing to wear. I argue by the lamplight, if the world asks us to age, wouldn't you want to keep it? So that when I wait for you in our white thatched house, I can see it, a smear of blue against the sandstone buildings, like a strip of paint we tried, then decided against.
Wow, that was fabulous.
Thank you. So I'll read one more poem from the pamphlet. And yeah, thanks so much everyone for listening, and looking forward to hearing the rest of your work throughout the event. So this poem is called Exactly That. Under the doorway, a line of light divided me from blue woolen jumpers, jumbled scarves, tubs of dust, and bric-a-brac. It was exactly like the smudge of mayonnaise on your lips at the burger place with great varieties of fried potatoes. Exactly a tartan curtain pulled over the clearest day, a garden thumping with life at the edges, a sea too cold to swim in. Exactly that moment when you left my flat, the sound of your footsteps rising behind you like smoke from a blown out candle. It felt exactly like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carly. I love the images in your poems, and I love, those connections that you make. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
It always has this lighthearted touch to it.
Thank you. I try to have this light-hearted element to it. So thank you very much. I'll link to the pamphlet in the chat if anyone's curious.
Yes,
so check it out.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Next, Steve, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Okay. Hold on a second, Steve. Let me just refresh the page with your bio on it, because I'm reading it from Indelible. And for some reason, when Zoom is on, everything else goes berserk on my laptop. So, right. I can't find it.
I'll just remain a man of mystery then, Roula.
Right. That's a good way of putting it. All right. So would you want to read your poems while I look for your bio, and then I'll read it after your first poem?
Yeah, should we go for that? Okay. I'm fine with that.
All right. Sure. Thanks.
No worries. All right. Well, just to start, I'm living in the English Midlands, and particularly in the Black Country, which was the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, and now is very much post-industrial. So I'm going to read 3 poems, and 2 of them touch upon that more or less. This one explains that there's a lot of beauty here, even though we are never going to be on the tourist trail. It's called Black Country Lunch Break. You don't see the beauty when you're looking at a map. All this sprawl, these roads, this housing looks forgettable and crap. Nowhere you'd want to choose to come, or somewhere you'd wash up. But the place we work and rest and play, it's here. It's home. And this morning, the sun on my face, me stepping outside to lean against the wall and take a break from the heat of the press. There were swifts overhead. The water in the cut as clear as crystal, coots, moorhens, a pair of swans, flag iris by the fistful, reeds and birch, all waving in the breeze. I'm nothing special, a simple man, one of the just about managing, but moments like these, they make my heart sing. I drink it all in. Water lilies and motorways, sprawl, solidarity and roads, drag hard on the fag. I tell the wife I'm giving up, but you know how it goes. I will. I should. I have, more or less. Then I slip back in through the chain link fence to the rhythm and beat and the heat of the press. So, that poem and the 3rd poem I'm going to do, which is a short one, both come out of my latest collection, 31 Small Acts of Love and Resistance. This one was written during the first lockdown here in the UK, which was about sort of late March through to, I don't know, May, June last year. So, yeah, this is a poem, again, set around here. And it's called Hometown Madonna. I'm trying to think if there's any language that I need to explain. I realised in the last one, I should have explained that a cut is the local term for a canal, the canals that we used to carry freight through before we had railways. I don't know if there is anything here. Lecky is short for electric. I don't think there's much else. Walking into town to spend a morning queuing like everyone else. She crosses the ghost of a rail line where freight trains used to run, passes one roller-shuttered shop front after another, the same fluttering notice, closed on advice of government, keeps 6 feet or more from everyone. Waits outside the post office to ask for £10 on the lecky and a second-class stamp. Notices how many folk wear masks now. Thanks God the weather's not damp, because waiting outside the chemist for a repeat prescription of happy pills would be nothing but miserable in rain. It's passable in sunshine. Queues again outside the bright lit barn of the supermarket the old ones say was built on the bones of the factory they knocked down before she can remember. Her feet are swollen. The small of her back aches. The child is pressing on her bladder, and it feels like every time it moves, it makes things worse, more uncomfortable than ever. This wasn't how she imagined life would be. And she curses her luck, the virus, this new normal where shops, not clubs, had bouncers on the door, everyone hitting the dance floor in the canned veg aisle to a soundtrack of our colleagues are working hard in difficult circumstances. Inside, she dances round strangers with a trolley and a plan. Tries to keep her distance as best she can, chooses soups, baked beans, sliced white, no booze. Not this week. Biscuits, chocolate, crisps, the usual. Sets her sights on the checkout, and then the playlist picks a tune she thinks her mother used to sing. Here comes the summer, here comes the summer. Here comes the summer. And Chantal wheels back into the shop for one more thing. Later, when she's lugging everything back across that ghost of a rail line, she'll stop for a moment, catch her breath and think how some days hope tastes of unexpected memories. Is a child moving inside you? Or how it can be the promise of a family tub of strawberry ice cream sitting at the bottom of a shopping bag, waiting. And she'll pick up her load again and walk home, humming. So,
Yeah, nice one.
That's lovely. You have a wonderful way of reading poems, Steve.
oh, thank you, Rula.
And I like how in the first poem you said, I drink it all in water lilies. So this drinking, and then you chose water lilies among all flowers. I mean, that was really nice.
It's literally from cycling along canal towpaths, and in the midst of this sort of old industrial landscape, you'll get crystal clear water and water lilies. You learn living here to find really tiny little bits of beauty and just appreciate them, because there's a lot.
Steve, it reminded me of Adrian Henry. I thought it was a wonderful poem. That last one particularly, I just thought it reminded me of Adrian Henry's work. I think it was wonderful, and the wonderful rhythm that you read it with, I thought was super.
Oh, thank you, Bernard. I'll take that every day of the week. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant.
I'll leave you with just a short one if I've still got time for it.
Yeah.
This is again out the book. This is a poem that was published as a postcard by Poetry on Loan, who are an organisation here who do a lot of work putting poetry in libraries. So they did a series of 8 postcards, and this was one last year. It's called Olives Only Once Mind, for reasons which will become obvious. 2 years on, she sleeps whichever side of the bed she wants, spends money how she fancies, tries olives, cocktails, trampolines, visits an art gallery, paints a wall, sits in the garden for hours watching the light shift, change, fade, fall. Sings in the bath, in the kitchen too, if the mood takes her, goes to the gym and the pub, loves both, loves chips more, is a woman of appetite and smiles, apologises for nothing, doesn't think of him at all. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm sorry to be introducing you late, but I will tell everybody a little bit on who you are. So Steve Pottinger is a poet, author, and workshop facilitator, and a founding member of Wolverhampton Arts Collective, Poets, Prattlers, and Pandemonialists. He's an engaging and accomplished performer whose work has appeared in magazines and anthologies, and he's a regular contributor to online poetry platforms. He's performed at Ledbury and Stanza Poetry Festivals, at the Edinburgh Free Fringe, and in many other venues. And he just shared some poems from his most recent volume, 31 Small Acts of Love and Resistance, published by Ignite Books. I believe that's your press, Steve, Ignite Books?
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much for sharing your wonderful poems and the wonderful reading. And next, Chris, are you ready now?
Yeah, can you hear and see me?
We can hear and see you very well.
Okay,
and
no, I had some problems earlier with my computer kept cutting out. So thanks for inviting me, and my name is Chris Murray, and my poems are, I'm very interested in imagism, and they're very they're visually based, and they're quite short. So I'm reading 4 today. The first one is an imagist. It's called Descent from Kirkpatrick, and it's about the idea of descent for women being an initiation, or stopping, or having to go in, which is something we've all had to do over the last year. But at the same time, it was my first published poem, and it was way back when, but I still like to read it at the beginning of readings. So I'm going
Wonderful
to,
how there are some poems that keep bringing you back to them.
yeah. Okay, so Descent from Kirkpatrick. Remember the placing of each and every stone. Remember the bone white light of each one beneath the bones of your feet. Remember the queer light they cast for your dream. He knocks the stones together to get out the green. Remember with your feet as you descend that there's gold in the mountain, that the stones skim circular on the bed of the stream. He knocks the stones together to get out the green. Remember the placing of each and every stone. Remember the bone white light of each one beneath the bones of your feet. Remember the queer light they cast for your dream. So the next poem I'm going to read is new, and it's from a work in progress, and it's called A Seed. And I've got the wrong version in front of me. Okay, Seed. Willow cut back to its hidden houses. Something secret furls, unfurls its stem self. Seed slopes, sloughs under crystal skin, her flesh blooms to tone, coralling a milky alumbin in water's distress. Floats, stays alive, winds its silver thread, fleshed bronze, pulls up willow's ochre curtain, veil. Cut, yes, I saw it, willow grove, willow grief. Winter flower blossoms on wet ground, bereft of their generations. Seed will lie, seed will lie. And the last two I'm going to read are from the Lorette series that I sent you and that you published at Indelible. And I'm very grateful for that because it was dedicated to Yvonne Boland, who was a friend and mentor of mine. We worked together for the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm reading two very short ones from Lorette's. And Lorette's is the protector of houses. In my case, it was protector of poetry. She was very encouraging. It's a dawn song, and I'll just read them. Pillar. Ravenful haven of claw, dawn's flute song dissipates. Rise up, regain light. Dark and down, my song is more than silhouette. To bring light, light song, oh bright song, sing to pierce the breast. Sing to pierce the breast, sing to pierce the breast. Night hooks brim to split. Sing to pierce the night, sing to pierce the night hooks brim to split. Dawn's contraction, slow the opening, a yellow-toned song to loosen the gum that holds peony's ample heart. And thanks for inviting me to read today, everybody. Thanks.
Such beautiful poems, Chris. Old and new, they're all beautiful. And again, I will say a little bit about Chris. Chris Murray is joining us from Dublin. And Chris has founded and curates Poethead, a website dedicated to platforming work by women poets, their translators and editors. She's a member of FIRED, Irish Women Poets, and The Canon, a group that seeks to celebrate and draw awareness to the rich cultural heritage of Irish women poets through readings. Her most recent book, Gold Friend, was published in autumn 2020 by Turas Press, Dublin. Chris is currently archiving objects related to the canonical neglect of women poets at Rascal, Queen's University, Belfast, and she is working on a new book. So we are very happy and honored to have you with us, Chris, and thank you for always sharing your beautiful poetry.
Thanks, Roula.
Okay, so
Roula?
Yes.
Can I butt in? I have to go to my day job. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate being able to get my,
Thank you so much
my
for being
2 cents
here.
worth in, and have a good time with the rest. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so next up is Bernard Pearson. And Bernard, are you ready?
Hello, yes. Hello.
So I'll read your bio a little bit in a second. Bernard Pearson is a poet whose work appears in many publications, including Aesthetica Magazine, the Edinburgh Review, Crossways, the Gentian, Nymphs, the Poetry Village, Beneath the Fever, the Beach Hut, Little Stone. In 2017, a selection of his poetry in Free Fall was published by Leaf Press. In 2019, he won second prize in the Aurora Prize for writing for his poem Manor Farm. He is also a biographer and prize-winning short story writer. So thank you, Bernard, for joining us tonight. And you're joining us from what part of England?
From Shropshire.
Oh,
a little market town called Oswestry. Okay, I've got three poems. The first one was written really in the middle of Donald Trump's administration, when it looked like we might be heading in a pretty bad direction worldwide. So this poem was written in response to the situation then, and it's called The Life and Death of Ghosts. This means war, apparently. But what this is a matter of conjecture. See how they come back now to the perimeter fence. They cannot believe that we are about to do it once again. This means war. The baker boy from Tiverton, unhinged from his limbs at Verdun. The potter's son from Kyoto, nothinged at Hiroshima. The girl, the child, seated across the hallway runner. This means war. The stick men of Changi that Lowry never drew. The candled children of Vietnam, oranged from their jungle homes by bladed horror from the sky. This means war. Open season in Sarajevo, gun and shovel in every hand. While in Rwanda, noisy corpses flowed down like a children's game onto the shore of Lake Victoria, party poppers in the sand. This means war, death in the deserts, where the despots start to fall. More guns and bombs is what they needed, so we answered the call. This means war. The oil lamp was robbed and wishes were made, but burnished promises of democracy in the murky light of day began to fade. This means war. We let the genie out of the bottle. Now it's hard to get it back, as the genie's not listening and his clothes are turning black. To the onlookers staring at us from the fabric of the night, this is madness, to do the same thing every time, knowing you will get the same results, still believing, despite the dead, that you are very nearly always right. Thank you. This is the poem that I was fortunate enough to get second prize in the Aurora poetry competition. And it's set in an old, it's an old Elizabethan farmhouse that belonged to a great aunt of mine. And that my father absolutely loved this house, but I was very ambivalent about it. I felt uneasy whenever I was there. So the poem reflects both my father's lovely memories of his aunt and my rather ambivalent feelings about the house. So it's called Manor Farm, Gotherington, and Gotherington's in Gloucestershire. The walls stooped under the weight of age. Windows frowned from gables out towards wicked old Cleve Hill. At the front, a cot, devoid of dove and egg, stood sentry, and I, a child, inside its bell, hushed by such anatomy, wondering at the innards of the past. In one barn, an old gig, crippled and wheelless, carried no one to prayer now. I remember to the side a pond rich of reed and birds, translating the summer into song. Then recall my father talking of the coracle that used to teacup him to the other side, while older boys in France now, not their village, left mothers for the mud. All this memory arrives in response to a photograph of my great aunt, a thin, tendrilled beauty in black velvet and fox fur, walking up the drive into her widowhood. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. One more.
And this is, hello, this is a final one, and it's a love poem. And it's called Cartography. You are my ordnance survey map. I know all your signs and places of special interest. Your towns are my towns. We fought on the same battlefield, peeked out from one lighthouse, tilted at windmills together as we come down from some hawk-blown trig point, having wiped the day's dirt from our souls. You hold my parchment hand as if it were freshly formed. Our geography may have changed from the peacock days, those campaigning hours of love and lust, the longitude of the morning and the latitude of night. But you remain my landscape. I take my grid reference from your eyes. Thank you.
That was so beautiful. Great, so thanks. I want to thank everyone who read so far. You may want to take a 5-minute break before we move to the second half of the open mic. And so we'll take a 5-minute break, and then, when you come back, you may also want to take a couple of minutes to check some of the comments that were given on your readings in the chat box, and you may want to answer those as well. All right, so see you in a few.
Okay, come on then, let's see if we can find a bit of food, shall we?
Be sure and mute your mics.
I guess you would want to take a few minutes to chat on the chat box. Robbie, thanks for sending the link to the anthology. I'll have a look at it.
Look at all the chat comments. I think I can keep up.
Carly, are you there? Carly?
I don't see her.
No. Oh, sorry. No, I was just chatting to her by mistake to everyone. Not, but I don't know how to do private chat. I just do everyone and just say the name. So, no, we're just talking about Edinburgh. I just finished recently this really beautiful book, Cambridge University Press, published in 2016, by this history of philosophy professor at St Andrews. It's an intellectual biography of David Hume. It's beautifully done. I mean, he's brilliant critic as well as obviously, historian. The way he writes, I mean, he's very nuanced, and it was unputdownable for me because I loved it. And you realize how civilized a certain part of the Enlightenment was compared to our day in some respects, obviously. We have more liberties, etc. But there are in some respects, they actually knew what it was to be philosophical in the real, integral sense rather than, anyway, I liked it. It was good.
Okay.
Roula?
Yeah?
Can I start the second session or do you want me to go later? I don't mind.
Actually, Joan is going first.
Okay.
Shortly, and then, yes, you can go.
Okay, at your leisure.
And again, Carol, I want to say thank you so much for being here early morning. I mean, I know it's quite early where you are right now. And Robbie, too. So you're both joining us from California. And my family, by the way, lives in, I was born in Chicago and then in Peoria, and then half of my family stayed there. And I have 2 uncles now who are in California in Santa Monica. And that's where my parents lived for the past few years. So yeah, I understand the time difference. So whenever we used to speak with each other, it was much later. Okay, so Joan, hold on.
Thank you.
I'm just taking care of your bio.
Oh.
Okay. So, Joan Leotta plays with words on page and stage as writer and story performer. Her poetry, short stories, and essays appear or are forthcoming in North Carolina Literary Review, Red Wolf, A Quiet Courage, A3 Review, Writing in a Woman's Voice, Silver Birch, The Ekphrastic Review, Anti-Heroin Chic, and others all over the globe. Joan's first poetry chapbook, Languid Lusciousness with Lemon, is out from Finishing Line Press. She has been a Gilbert Chappell Fellow for MC Writers and a featured performer for the North Carolina Story Guild. Her writing and performances celebrate the value of the seemingly ordinary moment and the joy of food, family, and friends. So, Joan, we are all ears and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roula. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially Omar. I'll try not to take too long. I did want to show you, though, you can't really see it. I'm not going to do a screen share because it's on my phone. This is the cover of what one of the micro chapbooks looks like. This is mine, my newest one. I actually have two, and they are a very lovely group origami. I'm rather committed to putting work out in public where people can just access it free. So I've got a number of things that do that with the state of North Carolina and on my own. So, okay, I thought I selected this first one because of the storm coming today, which we had. This refers to after the Hurricane Florence, and when our house was partially flooded, but fortunately only in the garage mostly. Dragonflies after the flood. On the porch, stench of mud all around, grass, sidewalk, up to the first step. A dragonfly follows me to the front door, then flits away when we go inside. My husband grabs a flashlight and flips on the electricity in the garage. The air conditioner growls awake. I press the opener. The big white door lifts, revealing poisoned, stinking mud spread from end to end. We glance about to gauge what can be saved, what is irretrievable from the grasp of the storm. Dragonfly glides in from the porch. He has brought a friend. I try to shoo them out. Chemicals, who knows what else in the air here. Leave, leave. They stay. We work. We cannot breathe the fetid air for long. About to close the door, I try again to get the dragonflies to leave. I think I've chased them out. But in the morning, when I open the door, I see them in the middle of the floor, curled up next to each other like lovers, angel faces smiling up at me, gossamer wings still shining as they did in life. I begin to cry. So many have lost so much in the flood. What we have lost, money can replace. My tears are for the dragonflies. They survived the storm, the water rising, dying only in the fetid air after the storm. Dragonflies, why didn't you listen to me? My tears will not revive you. And then I go on to something a little more cheerful. It's about, this was just published, that was published, by the way, in When Women Write last year. This is coming from Verse Virtual, actually this month. And it's about March. And the Joe referred to in this poem is our son, not my husband. Joe called the season of the big dog wind. Joe called it the big dog wind, the one that chases you down as you walk along, jumping on you when you least expect it. Joe called it the big dog wind, that sudden blast of air from the sky, strong enough to push you down on the sidewalk, forcing the breath out of you, panting over you with breath of the mountains. He's strong beyond what he realizes. His howl makes it hard to walk, hard even to stand up straight. Joe called it big dog wind. Today, recalling that, when I felt wind bearing down on me, I cried out, heel, wind, heel. Along the path, I walked by bare birch branches that rattled together in a laughing response to my exhortation. Wind himself seemed to take no heed of me, although I thought I heard a laugh within the howl as he continued on his way. Thank you. This one also appeared in Writing in a Women's Voice, but it started out as an ekphrastic for Rattle about a red suitcase, and it doesn't bear much resemblance at all to the, I guess, now looking back on it, horrible thing that I sent them. But revised, I liked it, and so did Beata. So here it is. It's called Suitcase Full of Ordinary, which I'm toying with as the name for another chapbook. Suitcase Full of Ordinary. In the attic of my mind, amid the detritus of childhood, sits a suitcase full of ordinary moments. Days passed without comment. It waits, locked away. Knocked about by life's larger forces, its corners are rounded, red fabric of colorful sunrise and sunsets torn. Bits of plaster bumped from my inner walls, scratches on my own inner frame. I pull this case down from that inner attic, glad I've found it, though I'm both curious and afraid of what might be hiding inside. Now I need to find the key to unlock the importance of the ordinary that rests within.
Beautiful. I loved your performance of the poems.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Come out live. All right. And next, Omar, you can go next. Let me introduce Dr. Omar Sabbagh, who is a widely published poet, writer, and critic. His first collection and his fourth collection are respectively My Only Ever Edible Complaint, that's his first one, and To the Middle of Love, his fourth. His fifth collection, but it was an important failure, was published by Cinnamon Press in 2020. His Beirut novella, Via Negativa, A Parable of Exile, was published with Licorice Fish Books in March 2016. He has written many award-winning pieces of short fiction, and his Dubai novella, Minutes from the Miracle City, is forthcoming with Fairlight Books in July.
Published.
Was published
2 years ago.
And a study of the oeuvre of Professor Fiona Sampson, Reading Fiona Sampson, A Study in Poetry and Poetics, was released by Anthem in 2020. He has published scholarly essays on George Eliot, Ford, Maddox Ford, G.K. Chesterton, Henry Miller, Lawrence Durrell, Joseph Conrad, Lytton Strachey, T.S. Eliot, Basil Bunting, and others, as well as on many contemporary poets. Many of these works are collated in his essay collection, To My Mind or Kinboats, Essays on Literature. He now teaches at the American University in Dubai, where he is Associate Professor of English. So,
thank you, Roula.
Omar?
Thank you very much, Roula. Thank you. And I would have traded all that for the mention of what I'm going to read from today, which is my forthcoming collection in early 2022 with Cinnamon called Morning Lit Portals After Alia. It's a book in the main about my daughter, who's now 21 months, just about, and but other things to do with parenthood and relationships in the wake of, if you can use such an awful word for a child, a beloved child, having a child. So it's kind of a very personal book, but I think it probably will end up being, I hope anyway, my best. So I want to read 3 pieces from that manuscript. The last one, if I get time for it, is shortlisted now for the next centenary edition of Acumen. I think it'll probably get in because she told me it made the shortlist and it's hopefully going to get in there. The first 2 are not published piecemeal. The first piece is a prose piece, like a little vignette, and it's titled Sunlight Upon Sunlight. And what it's based on is I saw my daughter, I was in Beirut and there was a bit of sun outside. And you know how when the sun comes through the window, it's refracted into little shapes on the floor. So she kind of went towards that little quadrangle of light and tried to step on it, tried to possess it almost, which is obviously impossible. But it's one of those quirky things children do. So I wrote this piece about that, sunlight upon sunlight. Sometimes my eyes will catch her caught in her own still moment. It is late afternoon, say, and spears of light angle into the living room. The long, deft spears of sunlight, almost violet-colored at this waning part of day. My girl might be gamboling in stumbling circles, chasing a fallen or moving toy, or just wandering around in search of the next bit of world to ignite the play of her imagination, the next foil to flame and billow through her like something we adults often recall as joy. And then just now, there is a moment, a point at which she stops the slipstream of her ambient mind, wagging and burgeoning into more and more life, at which she stoppers the humdrum roll or mask of time, corking it, bottling it, only to drink it up the more fluently, presently. She has spied, it seems, a small quadrangle of sunlight, reflected or refracted from the partly shaded, wide, wool-wide window, splayed there like a small, rare instance of loyalty or truth upon the Persian carpet. whose rigorous patterns play and dovetail between plum and beige, navy and a rich wheat gray. The charged citrus shape on the carpet beguiles her. What is there left to do, she seems to think, briefly, but to capture it. Sorry, I missed a little, but to capture it, grasp it, as though stepping and stepping again on a small good portion of sunlight were, in a manner, like the learning of a new word. Her greatest wish at this moment, it seems to me, is to reach and demand for the impossible. Likewise, she tries to catch and grip the clouds of smoke, emitted like spirals of mystery, which emerge from my toking mouth. I shouldn't be smoking in her vicinity, of course, but watching her attempt and strive for the impossible is one of the highlights of my day. So, when she steps and steps again upon this shard of sunlight, this workaday presence she makes strange, she is reaching, you might say, for utopia, or a place she's never been to as yet, a place, in fact, that none of us know, though distantly, perhaps, once a place we look to, searching the illuminate distance. Okay. Second piece is a poem which is in the collection so far. I don't know if it'll last because I'm still culling and editing until summer. It's titled "The Color of Blood Becomes Her," and it was just jump-started by looking at the color of my wife's top and then seeing where the ideas and language took me. So, the color of blood becomes her. If I look at you today, a marrow's mauve perhaps, or a purple's cotton with the gift of red seeping through. If I look and look, searching back to find the searching hook that had me both riveted and riven, had me both the doer of one quick and sure decision and the maker of a knot. And if I tug after long legs and much hard reading, the length of rope that makes this war of lengthy hope surrender. I see myself as both predator, provender in the jungle of our excess. See myself a prowler through wilds of eyeless wilderness in the feral light and feral dark between us, the softness and the dangers of our daily rote. And it does in fact become easier to please the God buried in the blood, or the God buried much further in, the chief inside the cells the flowing blood flows with, making its decisions. And easier too, to found, if you like, a kind of new religion, whereby prayer is clean and pure, a silent thing one does, and love, a law to be proven by no one judge, but by the two of us, building licit beauty, shall we say, from the mess we might have made, farming years of silken fabric out of years of dirt and mud. Okay, the last one, sorry if I have time. Do I have time? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
One more. Yeah.
Oh. So this one is the actual last poem of the collection. It has 3 epilogues, and this is the last epilogue. It's titled Enough. So, for Alia. Enough for Alia, yeah. There's no problem left to solve. There's no more mathematics left to fall into binding slumber, shelved and docked away. One more dusty moot, and dressed up to its workaday gray. And yet, I can't help but feed what the syllables wear, large, wide, and like purple empires, weaving as much as woven. I can't help but comment on a life as it was slyly finally stolen. Once, a spire was an avenue, the eye's path upwards. Now, I look to the sky and see buried gasps, beveled sighs, unpreferred and famished. For the first time, famished, and by the famished. A man can't do much, faced now by this creed, desperate as a losing wish. He could only fight wish with wish, the pedigree of his desire for the caged and blind and bombed out mind to turn and become again the widening hinge of that which burns the mind through what is, after all, the only human knowledge. That a ploy is not a plan, nor a faith, nor an arrow. That the mire of such gouged out eyes wreck at the heart of the driving passion, naming all things, and with such hot force, being nameless as such. And that the more rational the man, woman, the more reasonable, in fact. And given the choice, he will pass through hell and fetch the life he owes from out of the clutch of each daft evil which doesn't quite know or see itself as such. He will love to the point of dying and killing for the hand the jealousy of the glove. And then he'll stride on, no more worried, and through such underworlds where he has done enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Marvelous as usual, Omar. Thank you so much. And next up is Dr. Susan Porterfield. You there, Susan? Yep. Okay, so I will introduce you briefly. Susan Porterfield writes poetry and essays about poetical matters. Born in Chicago, she has a PhD in 19th century British literature and an MA in British art from the Courtauld Institute in London. She is the recipient of an Illinois Arts Grant for poetry, the Cider Press Review Editor's Prize for Poetry for her book, Dirt, Root, Silk, and she won a Fulbright grant to Lebanon, which resulted in her book of poetry, Kibbe. So, Susan, it's wonderful to have you with us again, and we're all ears.
Nice to see you. Okay. I'm only going to read 2 poems. This poem is going to be, it's going to be published by Echo Theo Review in their spring issue. So I'm reading it today. It's called Archaeologists Discover Mummy with Golden Tongue. And I'm reading this for us because we're all poets and we all want to have the golden tongue. And I love how the Egyptians must have realized how important language is. And to have a golden tongue is indeed a very valuable thing, especially in the underworld. This is a story from the New York Times, so there's also an epigram here. And from the New York Times, they say the tongues were probably meant to help the deceased speak in the afterlife, experts said. And they suspect it's so that they could talk to Osiris when they get there and be persuasive. So I think we all, as poets, we all value and understand how important language is and communication. And so I just, I thought this was a wonderful story. So it's archaeologists discover mummy with golden tongue. Glossa of gold foil. Ace up your sleeve. Once you get there, where you're going, you'll have to make your case. In Christian town, you're de facto in or out. Tongue of dust. Nothing much, anyway, to say. No honey words spread on the darling's nipples, licked sticky off lips. Words spun from filigreed threads, whisper thin, warm moisting an ear. Hear me out. Wait, what I think I meant. After all, will I be saved? Oh.
Wow. I love
That's that one.
And the way you brought it out. It's just amazing.
And the next poem I'm going to read is, I'm reading this from Kibbe, which was my second book of poetry. So not my most recent, but I been thinking about Lebanon quite a bit. And it's going through a lot. And I love Lebanon very much. My father was Lebanese. And this poem is about, it's called The Mountains of Lebanon. When my father and my mother moved to Tennessee, one of the things he said was that he moved there because the mountains there reminded him of the mountains of Lebanon. And I never knew what he meant by that until I went to Lebanon. And so my father is buried in Tennessee. So this poem tries to combine the notion of where he is now in Tennessee and where he grew up partially. By the way, I love Beirut very much, but as this poem points out, once I left Beirut, because of course I first came into Beirut, and went out towards, into the mountains, I loved it much more. I loved being out there much more, even than I loved Beirut. So I'm not sure why. Beirut is a wonderful city, but I loved being out there. So this is called The Mountains of Lebanon. The Tennessee hills are as green with pine and cleave to sky like these, wedged with towns in slabs amid the slant of olive groves, grape, and clementine. I believe my father is in Tennessee, layered beneath a marble block, striations of wedged bone, stone, ash. I believe he's here in the Kadisha Valley, spirited lightly away, uprooted as before. With the Mediterranean on my left, I drive out of Beirut, where I can breathe in the quilted silence laid down upon these hills, the ghost light arising hearth by hearth at dusk. So it's so lovely to see the lights come on in the little villages, one by one at dusk in Lebanon. I love that.
Beautiful. I know exactly what you're talking about. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Roula. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. And next up is Hedy. You ready, Hedy?
Yes, I'm just unmuted myself.
Okay, right. So let me just take your bio out. And I don't know if you won any other prizes ever since the last time I had your updated bio, but correct me if the number of prizes is inaccurate, because you always win some amazing things. You always have poems appearing in new places all the time. Okay, so I don't know what's wrong with my computer today. I don't think it's the internet connection, it's the computer itself, because I have them open and then all of a sudden when I go back to the page, they disappear. Okay, Hedy Habra was born in Egypt and is of Lebanese origin. She has authored 3 poetry collections, most recently The Taste of the Earth. Tea in Heliopolis won the USA Best Book Award and was finalist for the International Book Award. And Under Brushstrokes was finalist for the USA Best Book Award and the International Book Award. Her story collection, Flying Carpets, won the Arab American Book Award's honorable mention and was finalist for the Eric Hoffer Award. Her book of criticism, Mundos Alternos y Artísticos in Vargas Llosa, focuses on the visual aspects of the Peruvian novelle's narrative. A 14-time nominee, is the number correct? Is it 14 or 15 now?
16.
16. Okay. The 16-time nominee for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net, her work appears in Cimarron Review, Bitter Oleander, Gargoyle, Nimrod, and Verse Daily, and of course many more. And her website is hedyhabra.com. So Hedy, we are honored to have you with us. And thank you so much for always supporting us and enriching our poetry evenings with your beautiful verse.
Thank you, thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to be in such great company, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I will be reading from my latest or third poetry collection that came out July 2019, The Taste of the Earth. It's a memoir in poems, so I'll read a couple from the book, and my third poem will be an ekphrastic poem that is more recent. So I'll read a poem from the first part. The book has 5 sections, quite different. So just from the beginning section and the last section. The first, I have to wear my glasses. So the first poem I'll read is titled, I always knew I was a Sibyl at heart. I have paid my dues and fought mood swings before entering that stage of well-earned wisdom, preventing me from climbing over walls in midday, pacing interminable labyrinthine pathways, or drowning in the deep wells of insomnia. I've collected enough books to keep me company till the day I die, stacked in double and triple rows, in an arbitrary order they refute in unison. Each volume stares at me with eyes shut, scrutinizes my movements, tries to lure me into caressing its spine, opening it like an I Ching. Shouldn't I, on account of my years, be granted the sight? Recognize the rhythm of unspoken speech in the folds of each palm. Read the veins of each leaf blown by the wind. I could be scrying in the moonlight, eyes wide open like a wise owl, sensing the slightest reflection on still water. And the last section, which is mainly meditations about the aftermath of violence in the Middle East, and most of them are persona poems from the point of view of inanimate objects. And one of them, the one I'm going to read now, is a personal poem in response to the failed Arab Springs of 2011. And I do feel that it is relevant to read it nowadays with everything that is still going on. So here's the poem. I'd like to write a song of freedom. The daily news defies me, as does the almanac, when early signs of spring sprout in Egypt and Lebanon. Budding with innocence, walls rise, crushing voices with indifference. I'd like to write a song of freedom, a song of songs, merging the dialects of my youth into one heart, and share the lush ruby red arrows of Phoenician apples. Syllables fall off the table, lie formless all over the floor, powerless, unable to unite. How could they concoct an elixir of hope when time and again, in the land of milk and honey, fear settles its motto in streets steeped in carmine ink, where shades wander, forever haunting the site of their bloodshed? Unable to decipher the elusive pattern of unuttered words cluttered between my temples, a heavy armor pressed against my chest, I only feel the lift and pause of the waves surrounding silence. Will I ever learn the language of invisible scars tattooed all over my skin? And in another note,
Wonderful.
I'd like to, excuse me.
It's wonderful. And I want to say that I was very happy to have written a review on The Taste of the Earth. And if it weren't for the word limits, I mean, there's just, it would have been an endless writing about Hedy's poetry. There's just so much that you can say. It's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Roula, you're the ideal reader.
No, you're an ideal poet, Hedy. I mean, it's just so hard not to be amazed by everything that's in it. So it's a collection of everything. It's a collection of art, of science, of pain, of joy, flowers, colors. So it's bursting with everything. And your use of language is so elegant.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I'm humbled and delighted at the same time. So the poem I'm going to be reading is an ekphrastic poem. And it has been published. It was written last year. It appeared in the Bitter Oleander and also was reprinted by Verse Daily. And I have an ekphrastic collection that was published under Brushstrokes. And I published all the poems without acknowledging that they were ekphrastic poems and put an index at the end of the book explaining it. So the poem I'm going to read right now was, as such, it was submitted without referencing the source of inspiration. And it is part of a new collection, a new manuscript that is all over my dining room right now, trying to sequence it. And so the poem is inspired by a painting by Remedios Varo, one of my favorite artists. And I will show the painting, if you allow me to share screen, at the end of my reading, sure. Because I would rather have the words speaking for themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the poem I'm going to read is a persona prose poem, and it is titled, "Or How Can We Ever Cut Down to the Bare Essentials?" He kept retreating from room to room, feeling the weight of all the furniture and mementos staring at him like deceased relatives. It was as though the house wrapped layers of time around him, confining him inside a pod about to burst open. For a while, he'd only use his bedroom and the kitchen. He eventually retreated to the sunroom. Its walls lined with bookshelves comforted him as he lay on the wicker couch opposite the bay window. He soon realized he needed fewer meals and only one change of clothes. Feathers seemed to grow out of his bones, filling him with a desire to embrace the movements of the wind. He tried to get rid of plants, of his archived papers, of the photos that couldn't find their place in the abandoned albums. He sorted out the books he knew he'd never read or reread. Finally, the day came when, unable to break all ties, he clung to his tabby, the photo of a woman, a purple-lipped Cattleya, a few books, anything he could hide under his strong wings, slammed the door, and left. So if you'd like, I will share if you allow me to share the screen.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the painting. It is titled Vagabond by Remedios Varo. And this is what inspired me, this poem.
Beautiful poem. I mean, it just speaks to the painting, the way the painting speaks to it.
I have nothing showing a painting while one is reading an ekphrastic poem. And I've done that in PowerPoints with my first collection, but I feel like if one reads the text, the words first, and then a second rereading after having seen the painting, I think this enriches the experience.
Yes, yes, that definitely makes sense. Thank you, Hedy, for sharing this. And next up is Professor Claude Barbre. So Claude, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just refresh the page again so that I can see the words in the bio. It just freezes whenever I get back to it. Okay, so Professor Claude Barbre is Distinguished Full Professor at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. He is the course lead coordinator of the Psychodynamics Orientation and lead faculty in the Child and Adolescent Studies. Dr. Barbre served for 12 years as executive director of the Harlem Family Institute, a New York City school-based psychoanalytic training program. Author of prize-winning articles, books, and poetry, Dr. Barbre is a 5-time recipient of the International Gradiva Award for Outstanding Contributions to Psychoanalysis and the Arts. He is currently a board member and training supervisor at the Chicago Center for Psychoanalysis and in private practice in Chicago. So thanks for being with us tonight, Claude.
Yes.
And we're all excited to hear your poems.
Thank you.
You wanted to share screens, right?
Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Let me see. Yeah, can everyone see this?
Yeah.
I've been writing a lot of poems about animals since I've been in quarantine. I think it's a compensation and desire to be out in the natural world. I'm going to read 3 poems about animals that are unpublished. I'm thinking about, they will be a collection called American Elms in Quebec. My wife thinks the title should be Natural History, but I'll figure the title out for the manuscript. So the 3 points about animals. The first one is called Porcupine. And it's actually, these are encounters of a porcupine in Vancouver, as well as Quebec City, coming back from a restaurant at night 2 years ago. Porcupine. Twice this year, and both on city streets, you waddled into sight with strange authority, as if the camouflage of hiding in plain view could be the season's fashion choice for anyone so brave enough to wear a spiny coat of razor quills that drag along a hem and walk the alley lanes alone at night. With gentle quandaries of hollow spines, from ferret teeth to knobby feet, you ambled with a confidence belied by needing such a flank of reedy spears to weigh you down with wariness, and by such contradictions worn betrayed a shy complexity, as though you would prefer to shed the train of darts and needle trim that trail behind your armature and slip out of your body mesh to wear a softer side of symmetry. Little Minotaur, impassioned by routines, imprisoned by routines, your bristles quivered like magnetic pins of compasses that backwards point the way to dens of boss and creviced overhangs, from where you dreamed your solo getaways to gnaw the bark and tap the phloem of pines and bend the apple branches to the ground until the siren taste for roadside salt, the hallett glue and paint of housing wood compelled you to the labyrinths of town. And there we reconnoitered face to face, nocturnal creatures bound by restlessness and customary worries in our eyes, as if with time we could commiserate about the loveless world and loneliness, and plan to meet each week to hone our tales and walk together, never holding hands until the darkness slowly backs away.
Beautiful. We'll never look at porcupines the same way again.
This next poem is called Walrus. A sumo tori is a sumo wrestler, Japanese title. Sea ice sumo tori, scrapper and repose. If one's a crowd, then what is company? If music of the ocean never stops, then you who snarf and grapple for the last empty chair of island, rock, or flow will never rest, but rather rest in place. Entertain the eddies of your herd with gnars that bellow to enunciate the cold inductions of your latitude. Yet there, marooned inside your bulky mass, among the milling huddles you appear, to wave a fin. In motion there is room enough for still another congener, as if we could be seated by the shore and served a double portion of the cod, adorned with clams and gastropods unshelled, until a mustached maitre d' with tusks, who serenades with underwater churs, with surface to insist we move along, and by along would mean to move at all, and disappear into the blubber scrums that ruck and maul your core rivals to win an inch of uncontested dominance, a tooth fandango play with vibrancy that always ends with rolling into brine to leave your land leviathans behind, and dive into a benthic buoyancy where gestures are no longer cumbersome, and fannies fathom in their adipose will pirouette with flippers feather light into a magic surfeit of your fret, a heft of dedicated cellulite, an envy turned to pink instead of green among the onlookers that aggregate when at the water's edge they throng and bark. Scrimshawed by sand and whiskered sediment, your ivories will lance whomever twice, each time you replicate your birth from surf, a sophic Aphrodite spilling girth out of the spray with scallops on your breath, and demonstrate how beauty precedes grace with partial somersaults that take a day to make a single turn from flip to flop, and eye the thinning bears and killer whales that come your way and circle sure as snow. As austral winters cede to Arctic winds, you will submerge into your amplitude and heap a sole majority of skin around your bones, as if the world could end and find you snoring happily within your heavy wrinkles, stoical and spared.
Wow, that was amazing. Juxtapositions like dedicated cellulite, tooth fandango. That was pretty cool.
So I'll leave this. I'll leave you with this last point. I wanted to write a poem about blue whales. I was thinking about how they're sort of the mystery. They're like psychopomps or soul guides, how they appear and tend to call you away. And I was thinking about my father's blue eyes and the light going from his blue eyes, and so the image of my father's eyes and the blue whale kind of came together to make as a metaphor for this poem. It's about my father's death. It's called Blue Whale. In my father's closed pelagic eyes, the August behemoth would soon ascend, and climb the ocean stairs of indigo with blue infinities of falling songs until it pendulates to rise and breach into the glaucous parliaments of birds, the gabby kittiwakes and sooty terns who ruffle wings like waves that billow white along the breaker crests of broken coasts. And then into a seaward eminence, the deepest scent colossus of the cold and calling sea will breathe a final blow and take my father's breath in unison, a paired caduceus by living long, two pilgrims who survived the century by surfacing from deep unmeted cares to evanesce beneath the evening tides, glissading down the hadal slopes of dark, unfathomed arcs of liminalities, and take their leave together as they part.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Claude. That was fabulous. And next, we move to Lorette. So Lorette, you there? You ready?
I think so.
All right. So let me just refresh the page with your bio on it again. So Lorette is the editor of the Ekphrastic Review, which is a wonderful, wonderful journal of, as the name suggests, ekphrastic poems. And I greatly enjoy reading it and also submitting to it whenever I can. So I'm going to try again here, Lorette. I guess this time it should work.
That's good enough, I think.
Right, let me try. Okay. So Lorette C. Luzajic is a Toronto-based writer who studied journalism but loves poetry and small fictions. Her work has been published widely and internationally and nominated several times each for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. She recently won first place in a flash fiction contest at McQueen's Quinterly. Her work has been translated into Urdu. Her most recent book, Pretty Time Machine, is a collection of ekphrastic prose poems. Lorette is the editor of the Ekphrastic Review, a journal devoted to writing inspired by art. She is also an award-winning visual artist whose collage paintings have been collected in over 25 countries. Visit her website at www.mixedupmedia.ca. So Lorette.
Thank you, Roula, and thank you for putting this together and for all the things you do for us. It's so exciting to see these familiar faces now. It seems like we meet here every once in a while, and it's really rewarding to me to develop these friendships really from afar and the chance to hear your work. So thank you. Both of these are from my next book. I'm not sure when it will come out, but I'm hoping in the next year or so. And the first one, they're prose poems, which seems to be what I like to write best of all. So small stories that are poetic. This one is forthcoming from the Rathala Review. It's called The Garden, and it's about personal experience of growing up in a household with hoarding. The clatter of birds, the scattered blooms. Blue is aching bright over the orchards, with handfuls of cellophane clouds close enough to touch. Here is what I will leave behind: a gaggle of gamboling ducklings, the claret rounds of shy strawberry wilds. The foxgloves and delphiniums are swaying sentries at the edge of the hill. Today there is the sting of fire from behind the apple trees, a truck bed load of a life smelting to ash. There are mountains more to behold to the flames, towers of refuse, dusty brochures and jelly jars, cardboard boxes, newspapers spanning 4 decades. Already the city dump has turned us away after too many trailers of muck and dross. The thrift stores too, finally, have kindly pushed back our bounty. Mother is sniffling and ruddy, wringing her hands and cursing us even as we do all the work. She has not lifted a finger, of course, save to sift through another box of rancid sundries with hopes for salvage. My sister is sorting a heap of rusty wheels and dead electronics for scrap and recycling, and her teenage son is in goggles and gloves, clearing through the 5th freezer. He holds up a bundle of unidentifiable carcass, reads out loud, best before December 1983. Mother has already hauled off 44 trailer loads into storage and a half dozen to her new house too. To his new life, my father took only a suitcase and his Bible. I have not been here for years and I will never be here again. We have come apart. We are dismantling, untangling, unraveling. The mounds will follow Mother, spring up wherever she goes. No labor, no fire can erase her or annihilate her need and her rage. Her poison cannot be raised. Here is what I will take with me: the sweet trill of yellow summer warblers, the small triumph of that temporary demolition. And the second piece here is a more fictional story. I was kind of tampering with fantasy, which is not a common occurrence, but it's called The Skeleton Flower. It's also forthcoming from Unbroken Journal. He is telling us about the woman with 1,000 umbrellas, how her halls are lined with a garden of brawlies, chevron, checkers, damask, and chintz. She disappears when the clouds come close, dissipating into vapor, into the thin air. She collects umbrellas to prevent her own vanishing. She is shy to shower in front of him, he says, turning to glass in the mist, invisible in mizzle. She is transparent when she cries. You can see right through her like a window. It took some getting used to, he acknowledges, loving a girl who almost isn't there, slippery when wet. She told him from the start the origin of her mystery. She was conceived in a grove of Diphelia grays. He explains, Diphelia grays are a woodland blossom, tiny and white. They transform to clear when watered, either by hand or by dew. They look like crystal against the backdrop of leaves, so they are often called skeleton flowers. During the monsoons, he grows lonely, he admits, but he is enchanted again and again by her strange and beautiful blooms. Look, he says, showing us a photograph of translucent efflorescence. See how her petals turn to rain. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Lorette. You have one more poem?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's just 2 tonight. Thank you. They were very beautiful.
Thank you.
Am I missing anyone or is it just me? So I'm the last one to go. Okay. Right. So I'll be sharing a poem from my new book, Simply Being. And I was lucky to have Lorette and Chris endorse it with some really nice blurbs at the end of the book. And Omar wrote the introduction to the book. So again, I thank you all for supporting me. This poem is called A Trickster Triangle. And of course, it refers to the trickster archetype. I'm not going to give away too much, but this is also a reaction to some of the things that were unmasked during a time when everybody is wearing a mask. So there's this the contradiction between wearing a mask and then you know, whether or not you wear it. This kind of unmasks a lot of things about you. We noticed during the pandemic that so many people do not have enough social responsibility towards one another. So people were dying because they came into contact with someone who just, you know, wasn't wearing a mask or who carried a virus into the home or, you know, so people weren't being careful towards others the way that they should have. And also the rise of hyper-capitalism. There were so many opportunistic episodes that we saw. People were getting unnecessary pay cuts, although they were working double. Companies were making more money out of you know, just raising prices of goods and things because of just taking advantage of the situation. Okay, it's got some biblical allusions as well. A trickster triangle. Because we travel into the past at a fleeting split second per millennia, we see the people from 2,000 yesteryears again today. A recurring trio on stage wears masks of strength, cleanliness, and fidelity. There was a man named Caesar, grand and august, and we still give unto him what is his. He wears the bay leaves of self-proclaimed godliness. The other man, Pilate, looks decent and clean. We even saw him wash his hands. Got nothing on that innocent lad, or so he said. He wears a taintless shirt. There was also a Judas, friend and follower, overambitious. A good bargain of a chap, worth 30 silver chunks. He seals with a kiss. Here they remain, dancing the triangle, reappearing in different places, forms and variations of purity or lack thereof. Never gone tricksters, they wear bay leaves, clean shirts, and kisses, only to remove them, teaching us that not all that glitters is gold. It can be 30 silver pieces, for example. Not everything washed is sterile, and it only takes is one moldy embrace to rot the dozen. Euripides repeats, often a noble face hides filthy ways. This was a story of long ago, yet way too young to be old. For once upon a Caesar, always upon a Caesar. We continue to sacrifice the lamb and choose the thief, crucify him, and they blame it on the hordes, but never on the clean hands. And there's another poem here called, well, the title is, it's not really an allusion, but it was inspired by Death of a Naturalist by Seamus Heaney. This one is called Death of a Capitalist. In the beginning was the word, and while a sentence begins with a capital, never does it end with one. The first letter, towering arrogantly over its fellow flowing phonemes, will be long forgotten when a full stop anchors the shore, sentencing all characters to a period that lasts forever. When they fall like a deck of domino tiles, pips lost among the rubble. For many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. Reptiles and all brood of vipers do not perspire, just like statues of maybe equality, liberty, and fraternity. But leeches grow ungratefully on sweat and blood until falling off the host into a dreamless sleep. Okay, I'm going to move to a poem that is not in the book, but this is part of the manuscript I'm working on for the forthcoming one. And it's called Sometimes It Helps. Sometimes it helps to know that this will all become one big laugh, one urchin of a dream from the rocky bottom of that ocean we call the self. It will be a high hurdle past, and with flying colors. It tickles a pair of sleepy eyes into wakeful temptation, to look up and realize that wherever you are, no matter the woolly thickness of the fog, the stars will always be with you. Pinning the night sky into place, they are in you and of you, as you are of them. It helps to remember that as above, so below. So thank you all for being here. And it was such a pleasure hearing all those beautiful poems. And I mean, this is not just part of the festival. As you know, this is something that happens, that is ongoing. But the next time we will have this will probably be end of April or beginning May. So I'd also like to remind you all that the next theme of the forthcoming issue is food. So if you have any interesting poems or short stories that involve food, please by all means send them. And this is for our June issue, June 2021. So until we meet again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.